Hey, everybody. I'm here with Steph and Ron.
I'm miserable.
Howdy, howdy.
So let's take a walk back just real quickly. Remember how we used to love Russia? Remember, in fact, Americans interceded in their election to help get a guy who was more friendly to the United States elected. Remember when we did that to Russia? Remember we were palsies? Do you remember that? I remember that. So remember when we interfered in their elections? That's the cover of Time magazine. It says, Yanks to the rescue. The secret story of how American advisors helped Yeltsin win. So what is this all about? Well, this guy, Don Trump Jr., is a kind of a knucklehead. And he got an email from this guy who... He's the linchpin. This guy is the linchpin in the Don Trump Jr. treason, espionage story that's happening right now. This guy's the linchpin. This is a real big espionage thing that they were doing.
That looks like a guy who would leave no tracks behind.
Not at all.
That definitely.
And so he, what's that guy's name?
Rob Gladstone?
Rob Gladstone. So he is in Britain. He worked for Russian oligarchs. He sends an email to Donnie Jr., says, I'm going to set up a meeting for you with some biggie shots from Russia. Turns out it's a meeting with this woman who's an attorney from Russia, not a government official. So I'm going to show you who all these people are. So see this? I'll make it bigger. So Donald Trump's Jr.'s meeting, who's who? So there's Donnie. That's his. So Donald Trump's business partner, Aris Aglarov, for the 2013 Miss Universe pageant, who appeared. So Trump has a business partner, this guy, Aris Aglarov, and he has a kid. This is his kid, and he's a pop singer in Russia.
He's a superstar.
So this guy's a billionaire. The American press calls them oligarchs. It's amazing when they're Russian, they're oligarchs. When they're Americans, they're just rich people. Isn't that amazing? Someone else said that. I don't know who said that. Somebody said that on Twitter. I was like, that's a great point. So this is who we're dealing with. So this guy is the son of this guy who's a business partner of Donnie T's. And this guy's a billionaire over there, a rich guy. And so this guy has like a manager or like an agent. And his agent, it was this guy. So he's like a PR guy, agent guy who worked with him. So he sends an email. So now here's Donnie Trump. There's the guy.
Rob Goldstone.
So he's a publicist. So that's what his official title is, publicist. I said PR, publicist for that guy. And he arranged the meeting between Donald Trump Jr. and this woman who's just a lawyer from Russia. Her name is hard to pronounce, Natalia Veselnitskaya. And I know I'm not doing it right. Paul Manafort is Trump's he was his campaign manager for a little while. And then there's Jared Kushner, who accompanied Donnie Tanahans to the meeting with this woman. Does that follow? Do you follow who everybody is now? So here's some of the emails. Emin just called. That's the young pop singer. Emin just called and asked me to contact you with something very interesting. The Crown Prosecutor of Russia met with his father, Aris, this morning, so now you know who those people are, and in their meeting offered to provide the Trump campaign with some official documents and information that would incriminate Hillary and her dealings with Russia and would be very useful to your father. Now, see where he says the Crown Prosecutor of Russia? There's no such person. There's no such, that's not a real thing. There's no such Crown Prosecutor of Russia. So people are speculating who he meant by that. We're going to get to who he meant by that in a minute. So there's some documents that your father, plus he says this is obviously very high level and sensitive information, but is part of Russia and its government support for Mr. Trump. So Donnie Tanahan's son says, if it's what you say, I love it, especially later in the summer. And that's what's everyone's freaking out. He says, Don, this is when he sets up the meeting. Don, hope all is well. Emin asked that I schedule a meeting with you and the Russian government attorney who was flying over from Moscow for this Thursday. I believe you are aware of this meeting and so wondered if 3 p.m. or later on Thursday. So there you go. So that's the whole story. So he has a meeting with that woman. She's not from the Russian government. And the woman doesn't have any information. So this is how it's being reported, like everywhere. But here's from the Huffington Post. It says Tuesday's revelation comes after an earlier New York Times story on Trump Jr.'s meeting with the Kremlin-linked lawyer. So that's ubiquitous. They just keep saying the Kremlin-linked lawyer. That's everywhere. News reports on TV, news reports in print. It's everywhere. So who is she Kremlin linked? How is she linked to the? So I'm like, she's Kremlin linked, and they just say that. So a news reporter will just say, or a host will just say, yeah, Donald Trump admitted to having a meeting with the Kremlin linked lawyer, but they'll never go how she linked. So I was wondering, like, how is she linked? Because that would be a big deal if she.
Sounds like you had a revelation too, Jimmy.
So I looked it up. So it turns out, this is according to the HuffPo. Her name, again, Natalia Veselniktakshika, whose clients have included Russian state-owned business and the son of a senior Russian government official.
Okay.
So like if a senator's kid gets caught with coke, and someone gets hired to represent them, that's what that would be. The son of a senior Russian government official, right?
Yeah, so she's probably a pretty good attorney.
So she's an attorney.
Probably good at her job.
I don't know. I mean, she's an attorney who works for high power. So there you go. So her clients have. So she doesn't work for the government. She's a lawyer who's represented businesses owned by the government, and she's represented children. She rented out a kid of a guy who works for the government as a lawyer. So that's what they call her. Kremlin linked. That's, I could say right now, Cenk Uygur is a American government leaked lawyer because he's a lawyer and he's running the Justice Democrats, which is working with people who are in Congress right now, like Ro Khanna and all those other people. So you could say he's a government linked lawyer, Cenk Uygur. You could say that about him. He's a government-linked lawyer. So when people say a Kremlin-linked, what the F? What does that mean? That's what it means. She's a lawyer who represents. That's as far as I can tell. There's one other thing. This is from The Guardian I found. A source who knows her also told The Guardian she has a long-standing personal connection with Yuri Chaka, Russia's powerful prosecutor general. Now, this guy, Yuri Chaka, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, that's the guy who people think he was referring to when he said the crown prosecutor.
Correct.
So he's the prosecutor general. Okay, so just so you know. So this is according to The Guardian. That female lawyer is no Kremlin power broker. Having spent most of her career working on business disputes in the courtrooms of the Moscow region, a province that surrounds but does not include the city itself. So she's, as far as I can tell, I've looked around. If you can find a better link with her to the Kremlin, I wish you would show me, because every time I watch a news report, they just say it and they never show. Again, there's never showing the link. So I would like. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm saying I'd like to see it. I looked, I couldn't find it, but I'm no NCIS. Is that how you say it?
Yes.
So get through that. So here's what people are saying, that it was illegal, that what Don Trump Jr. did was illegal and treasonous. And so here's a guy who's a former ethics lawyer for George W. Bush. Boy, say that 3 times. An ethics lawyer for George W. Bush. He was the ethics lawyer for the war criminal. Kept him out of prison.
Throwing a lot of stones from that glass house.
No kidding, right?
I mean, geesh.
You're the ethics. That's just that's like being you're the trainer for Chris Christie. I'm his personal trainer. I'm really proud of myself. You're the ethics lawyer for George W. Bush. This is what the ethics lawyer for George W. Bush. That's just such a funny thing to say. He says if he intended to get illegally stolen private information from the Russians, it was illegal for him to attempt to do so, just like buying stolen goods from a known fence. I would probably agree, but again, there's not been one shred of evidence produced that shows that this was stolen evidence, or did someone say it was stolen? No one said, hey, I have some illegally obtained information I'd like to share with you. That's not what they said. They said we have some dirt on her that your father would. You saw what they said. The two big questions are, this is from a different, this is from Rick Hassan. He's an election legal expert. He says the two big questions are knowledge it was a foreign source, as well as if the information being provided counts as anything of value for purpose of the law. We're going to get back to that little part in just a second. Anything of value. Because that's the way they're trying to go at him now. So now this is that former ethics lawyer for George W. Bush, and here he has more to say about this.
Trump Jr. And Jared Kushner were apparently both of them involved in this. And this was an effort to get opposition research on an opponent in an American political campaign from the Russians who are known to be engaged in spying inside the United States. We do not get our opposition research from spies. We do not collaborate with Russian spies unless we want to be accused of treason. And I can say I worked for 2.5 years as the chief ethics lawyer of the Bush administration. The Bush administration never would have tolerated this. And if this story is...
That takes balls.
You know, that paragon of morality and ethics. The George W. Bush administration, they would have never tolerated this while they were illegally invading other countries, ordering war crimes to cover it up and lying to their own country.
Wow.
This is your expert. This is who they go to. This is who you're going to indict Donald Trump Jr. This motherfucker. That guy's got, I got to tell you, he almost didn't make it in for this segment because they couldn't. The doorway was not big enough for his balls. Did you know that? They had to widen the doorway. Well, they had a wheelbarrow. He carries them in a wheelbarrow. This guy, the fucking ethics lawyer for the Bush administration would have never put up with this. What? Scooter Libby, are you effing kidding me? What about Dick Cheney? What about ordering torture? What about lying to the country into an illegal war? The worst thing you could do. What?
At least, you know, if you're ever in his neighborhood, you'll know which house is his. It's the one that's made out of all glass with the mission accomplished banner. It's easy to find his house. Easy to find his house.
Let's see what else he has to say.
We'd have one of them, if not both of them, in custody by now, and we'd be asking them a lot of questions.
This is the guy. He's gonna arrest someone else for something illegal. The guy from the Bush administration. They'd be in cuffs. Yeah, and we have 2 war criminals, maybe 4, right now walking around from your administration. Bona fide war criminals. Anyway, so that's what that guy says. So he says, let's listen to it one more time because it's kind of important.
Trump Jr. And Jared Kushner were apparently both of them involved in this. And this was an effort to get opposition research on an opponent in an American political campaign.
In an American political campaign.
From the Russians who were known to...
From the Russians.
Engaged in spying inside the United States. We do not get our opposition research from spies. We
do not get our opposition research from spies.
Collaborate with Russians.
We don't collaborate with Russians. Well, that's weird because I don't know if you remember that dossier, that Steele dossier that was sent to John McCain that everybody talked about in October. Do you remember that? It's the one where it said the prostitute was doing the PP games with Donnie Tanahan. Remember that? That was, everybody talked about that.
Right.
Right? So Christopher Steele, he was an ex-spy for another country. And after he compiled the Trump dossier, he went underground. Is that what that means? Goes to ground?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So here's that guy. That's him. He's a spy. Who is that guy? Mr. Steele, 52, was a longstanding officer with MI6, the British equivalent of the CIA, serving in Paris and Moscow. So this guy served in Moscow. I wonder if he's a Kremlin puppet. In the 1990s before retiring. How do you know he's not a Kremlin puppet? He worked in Moscow. How do you know he's not working for the Russians, this guy? That's as much evidence as anyone else needs. Oh, I got a picture of Jill Stein. In 2009, he started a private research firm, Orbis Business Intelligence Limited, with Christopher Burrows, now 58. Mr. Burrows has refused to confirm or deny that Mr. Steele and Orbis wrote the memos that made up the dossier. Initially under contract to a Washington firm paid to dig into harmful matters from Mr. Trump's past. So that was people who were running against Trump were getting opposition research on Trump. So the people who were running against Trump got opposition research on Trump, and they got this guy to do it, Mr. Steele. And he was upset, the Steele guy, was that they weren't talking about it enough in the press, so he sent the whole dossier to John McCain, who then started raising a stink about it. So Mr. Steele is Mr. Steele, as a known former MI6 agent, was thought not to have gone to Russia in his investigation, but to have used contacts inside and outside the country to prepare the dossier, which the United States intelligence agencies have said they cannot substantiate. But the file was used to prepare a 2-page appendix to the intelligence presentation American officials gave to Mr. Trump last Friday. So I don't know. Maybe I'm missing. So again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm a jagoff nightclub comedian. Maybe that's different. I don't know. So Donald Trump Jr. has a meeting with a frickin' lawyer from Russia who has no information and never said they had stolen information. They never said they had stolen information. They never said it was obtained illegally. They said we have dirt on information that would be helpful to your father. That didn't say we have stolen information. We have illegally gotten information. So we have information. Where the fuck did that guy get his information from? Where did Steele get his information from? He got him from his contacts inside Russia. Now, did they steal the information? Does anybody ever? No one ever asked that question about that dossier, did they, Ron? Did anybody say, hey, was that information stolen? No one ever said that, right?
No, that was never a thing that came up.
So again, maybe I'm missing something, but this is the story. It's been reported again so shittily, like this whole did. So here's from a former CIA spy. This is from Raw Story. She says, I have conducted background investigations. If you do not disclose meetings with foreign nationals, especially one promising dirt in exchange for something, that's a big deal. But I read the emails, Ron. Did you see them promise something in exchange for something?
No, it was just two people planning a meeting. I
Yeah.
mean, if there was anything that incriminating there,
With the
Donald Trump
Kremlin.
Jr. wouldn't have just
They
released it on his own.
So this is implying a quid pro quo, which was not in those emails.
Yes, but I would clarify that really quickly, that I think Donald Trump Jr. knew that the emails were going to be published by the New York Times, so he wanted to go and preempt that.
Right.
But all along, when I look at those emails, I'm trying to figure out what's so horrible about them.
So again, Steph, what they're saying is that if you can't have a meeting with a foreign national, well, here, we're going to get to it. But they're saying that what he did was treason and illegal because you can't get stolen, like all that stuff he just said. Well, it wasn't stolen. First of all, there was no information. Second of all, and none of the emails I read that you guys read, both of you read, did they say this was stolen information or illegally gotten information? So, but that's what they keep implying. Everybody who says something about this with a legal opinion, they imply something that's not in evidence. Meaning Donald Trump Jr. knew he was getting illegally gotten evidence. No one, that's not in evidence. Okay. This is from the same person. That's not leaving out an address you had for 2 months in college. It's raising a number of eyebrows and can result in the counterintelligence investigation. It can get you locked up. So now we go to the International Business Times. Here's an article from the 10th of July from Alex Koch in the International Business Times. It says Donald Trump Jr.'s Russia meeting violated campaign finance laws, government watchdog alleges. Okay. So this is from that one day after offering a different explanation, Trump Jr. admitted to accepting a meeting facilitated by a contact he knew through the 2013 Miss Universe pageant in Moscow with Natalie Veselentinkanya, believing that she would provide damaging information about Hillary Clinton. Based on the legal definition of solicitation, it is likely Trump Jr. broke campaign finance law.
Yeah, they need to interpret it as he got a solicitation because, like, during a campaign season, if you solicit a solicitation or a contribution of value from a foreign entity, well, that's not legal.
Right.
Is it treason? No, it is not. That is not treason. However, interpreting the law that way, his actions were illegal.
But I don't even see where he solicited it. It was someone set up a meeting saying someone was offering something. He didn't solicit it, right? Am I misunderstanding the term solicit?
No. I mean, there's a lot of interpretation that has to take place there. That's why they're saying it's likely he broke this. It
so
depends
it's likely.
on how
It's how you interpret it.
It's
right?
how they interpret it, or how.
So Brendan Fisher, federal and FEC reform director at the Nonpartisan Campaign Legal Center, tweeted Monday morning that such opposition research would constitute an in-kind donation. Something of value. Remember, I talked about that earlier. Something of value given free of charge, and that arranging a meeting to receive that information qualifies as solicitation. So there you go. So just arranging that meeting qualifies as solicitation. So what they're saying is, according to election law, is that information on Hillary Clinton was of value. So now they're giving something. So just like if they gave to Donald Trump, say if someone conducted a poll, paid a polling organization to conduct their own poll, and that information was valuable to Donald Trump, if you give it to them, that information has value because you just paid for it. That's like you giving them a campaign donation. So that's what they're talking about. So this woman giving them information, if you can put a value on that information, that's like them getting a campaign donation. That's what they're saying, right, Ron?
And I can totally understand that interpretation because it is incredibly difficult to find anything incriminating on Hillary Clinton.
So federal law prohibits any person from soliciting a campaign contribution, donation, or any other thing of value from a foreign national in connection with any U.S. election. So that MI6 Steele dossier, what the hell? No person shall knowingly solicit, accept, or receive from a foreign national any contribution or donation prohibited by paragraphs B through D of this section. The law reads, foreigners are even prohibited from expressly or impliedly promising to make such a contribution. Okay. If the Federal Election Commission takes up the matter, this is according to this person who's the FEC, it will conduct its own investigation, Ryan said. Then if it concludes a law was broken, it will urge Trump Jr. and certain campaign officials to enter into a settlement agreement, which would likely involve a fine. If Trump Jr. and the campaign refuse to negotiate, the FEC would have to conduct a civil lawsuit against them. So basically what this guy says is what Donald Trump Jr. did, if he's found guilty, this person says it only rises to the level of a campaign finance a violation, and that he would just have to pay a fine. So that's far from treason. In fact, here's from Vox. What Donald Trump Jr. did was wrong and maybe illegal, but it wasn't treason.
Bingo.
This is by Dylan Matthews. This is July 11th. The U.S. has to be at war with the country for helping that country for it to be treason. So we're not at war with Russia. So that's
despite some people's wishes.
Right?
No, we're not.
Right.
And I really hope it stays that way.
Here's Article 3, Section 3 of the Constitution lays out the definition of treason used in U.S. criminal prosecutions. Quote, treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. This is nonsense. Whatever Trump Jr. did, it's definitely not treason. Treason is a very specific crime with a definition set forth in the Constitution that Trump Jr.'s conduct doesn't come close to meeting, for one simple reason: the United States is not at war with Russia. And in case if you weren't sure if we were at war with Russia, here's Barack Obama.
Governor Romney, I'm glad that you recognize that al-Qaeda is a threat, because a few months ago, when you were asked what's the biggest geopolitical threat facing America, you said Russia. Not al-Qaeda, you said Russia. In the 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back, because the Cold War has been over for 20 years. But, Governor, when it comes to our foreign policy, you seem to want to import the foreign policies of the 1980s.
Don't you remember?
Go ahead.
Don't you remember when we saw that the
Yes.
first time and we were like all shocked? Why is Mitt Romney talking about Russia? It was so weird. It was so off the chart. And I was like, oh my God, am I supposed to be afraid of Russia?
Let's remember, I showed you that the Bushes used to go fishing on Kennebunkport for the weekend with Putin. The Bushes, both of them. They would go on fishing trips. They would go fishing with Putin. They were all palsy. Remember, George Bush looked into his eyes. He saw his soul. Remember that? George Bush saw into Putin's soul. You remember that? I do.
Well, and what's the theme of all this? Gore Vidal said it best. We live in the United States of amnesia. That's why this is a distant memory to so many people, what Obama said to Mitt Romney. That's why we have an ethics lawyer for a war criminal wagging his finger at a current administration, because people don't remember.
Holy shit. So that's how I'm going to report this story. According to what you're going to listen to a fucking lawyer for George Bush? Wag his fit, exactly what Ron just said. So according to according to Vox, according to what we've seen in the International Business Times, according to what I've been able to ascertain reading the emails and what have you, and nobody ever said it was stolen information. The woman doesn't work for the government, even though every reporter who's talked about this that I've seen has said she's Kremlin linked. Who isn't? That's like saying an American lawyer linked to the U.S. Washington, D.C. You could say that about any lawyer. I know 2 lawyers off the top of my head who work at the Young Turks. You could say that they're linked to the U.S. government in D.C. because they work with politicians all the time. So, again, we're talking about this in the middle of the most corrupt government in history. The government does not represent the people. We live in an oligarchy, and it's amazing how they know how to call Russian billionaires oligarchs, but the people in the United States, the billionaires here, are just trying to help us. Just like Jeff Bezos, he's trying to help us. Now he's going to bring us good food through Whole Foods. All these guys, they're the best. The billionaires, they couldn't be nicer people. They all want to help us. So right now, our government is completely corrupted. Completely. The Democrats are killing single payer. 70% of the country wants single payer. 80% want a public option. We ain't getting it because the Democrats are corrupted. Everyone knows that. So that's what's happening right now. There's lead still in Flint. By the way, all over the country, there's lead in our water. We still have the biggest income disparity since before the Gilded Age. Half of all wage earners in America earn less than $30,000, and it's only getting worse. We got 45,000 people a year die in America because of lack of health insurance. So we have big problems. And Donald Trump Jr. meeting with some frickin' lawyer from Russia isn't one of them. Do you think it is?
Well, you know, when I started to read all about this, I kept thinking to myself, okay, I think there are a list of 20 people that could go for and try to defend themselves because of their war crimes that they committed. President Bush, Dick Cheney, Rumsfeld. There's a list of people that they could be shouting at the top of their lungs that should be brought to justice. Donald Trump Jr., this isn't the story.
Steph, wouldn't it seem weird that after a decade of not prosecuting war criminals and after a decade of not prosecuting the people who literally filled their pockets with taxpayer cash as they crashed our economy. Not one prosecution, not one hearing. That after all this, banks laundering hundreds of millions in drug money. Hundreds of millions in drug money. We know they're doing it. Not one prosecution. Not one. So after that, now we're going to prosecute Donnie Trump's kid for having a meeting with a frickin' lawyer who offered them nothing and never said anything was illegal? And that... It's amazing what the fuck is going on in this country. We could not keep our eye off the ball more. This is what's wrong with having millionaires bring you the news. This is what's wrong with having millionaires. If you see Keith Olbermann, he doesn't know there's another story in the world besides Donald Trump and Russia. Because that guy's been a millionaire for 30 years. So, and the rest of he's not, I'm just pointing out because he used to be my favorite, guy, Keith Olbermann. And this story has lots of people who I respect have lost their minds on this story. And they don't adhere to any level of standard that they would for any other story. Yeah. Any other story, you're shamed. You're called a conspiracy theorist immediately. Any other story with no proof, you're called a conspiracy theorist immediately. That's why they say colluded when they say Trump. They didn't say, Trump conspired, because people go, is that a conspiracy theory? By the way, conspiracy theory is a term invented by the CIA to shut people up. Did you know that? That's another video. So there you go. Okay. Woo. Donald Trump Jr. might have to pay a fine. That's what it looks like. Because all those people saying that, he did this, he didn't do that stuff.
Yeah, and it's just unbelievable because, like we've been saying, if you really focused on, because somebody the other day said to me, like, are you sympathetic to Trump? And I said, no, absolutely not. This administration is absolutely despicable because look at what they're doing. They're trying to put forth an anti-healthcare bill that has about a 12% approval rating. They tried to rush through 2 pipelines that the public despises. They're trying to end the separation of church and state, gut unions forever. If you really highlighted on what they're doing, and net neutrality, if you really highlighted on what this administration is doing and how far they are from any public support, how far this guy is from all the broken promises he has thus far, his approval rating would probably be in single digits. Instead, we're supposed to do this mental gymnastics to pin something on his son and put all of our eggs in the Red Scare basket. How delusional can you get?
Well, additionally, what difference is there really between this administration and what Democrats are working towards?
Well, Steph, we just did a story that a lot of the top donors to Hillary Clinton's campaign are now working to make sure Trump's agenda gets passed. Net neutrality, get rid of. They want that. Again, we need a revolution. And this is why. So after losing to Trump, instead of still talking about what's the problems of the country, they won't. Our ruling class, the media elite, they will not talk about the problems in the country. This is all, and the only reason they're going to talk about Trump, A, because it's ratings, and B, because it's all about them gaining power. It's got nothing to do about serving you, because if they cared about you, they'd all be screaming at the top of their lungs for single payer. But they're not. The Democrats are killing it. They're installing pharmaceutical lobbyists as the chair of their party.
Well,
complete corruption. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the corporate media maximizes profit when they have a scapegoat.
Yes. So, again, I would urge the media to get back to covering what's messed up with this country that we can fix.